This video is for students of IAS 566 Advanced Database Management. We'll be taking a look at how to create a free virtual private server on the Google Cloud. So I'm just logged in here to my Google account, and I'm going to go ahead and go over to the Google Cloud platform by just going to cloud.google.com. All right, we're going to get started for free, and we'll fill out some information. United States, what describes my needs? Going to be a class project. Terms of service, I've read the terms of service. Go ahead and continue. Identify, that's fine. Contact number. Okay, so it's going to ask for payment here. You'll notice there's no charge until after the free trial ends. And they're going to ask for the credit card information, but they're not going to charge us unless we manually upgrade, so you don't have to worry about accidentally putting a large charge on your credit card. So let's go ahead and get this part filled out. So account type is going to be individual. Go ahead and add in a credit card information here. I'll do that off screen. And fill out the address information. My school address, 790 NRB, over Utah. 84602. Start my free trial. Welcome. Looks like everything's going okay here. I'll answer some questions here. What brought you to Google Cloud? Learn more, explore. That's probably a good answer. Your interest in doing with Google Cloud. Main thing today is virtual machines. I'll go ahead and do that one. What best describes my role? Let's see, academic educator. That's probably best for students as well. Alright, so you'll notice it says my first project up here. Why don't we go ahead and create a project just for advanced database management. So I'll drop that down, create a new project. I have 8 new projects remaining in my quota. That's great news. Why don't I go ahead and just call this Advanced DB, ADVDB. No organization, that sounds great. Like it's creating my project. We'll pause while that goes through. Oh, there we go. Looks like it's completed pretty quickly. I will select that project. And we'll scroll down here to Google Compute Engine. So let's go ahead and go to Google Compute. Like somehow I'm still on my first project here, so let's see if I can choose my advanced database project this way. There we go. So now I've got advanced database, and let's go ahead and enable this for me on Compute Engine. All right, that took about 30 seconds to get me to this far. So now I think we're ready to create an instance. So we look here, I can see it looks like I have no virtual machines. We'll go ahead and create an instance, and we'll go through it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. I'm going to name this after myself. So I'm going to put my actual name in here. So I'm going to do this gov-allen. Okay, I'm going to try to configure this so that it stays within the free tier of Google. So even after my credits have expired here, I'll be able to run this machine without charge. I've been following an example on, or a little article on Medium, and it runs in my mind that the absolutely free ones are only available in some regions. And I'm not sure what regions we can choose from, so I'm going to follow that example, and I'm going to choose Oregon here as our region. And I guess I'll choose the default zone. Okay, so over here in the kind of machine we have, we'll definitely want general purpose. None of the these optimized ones are in the free tier. So for the series, I guess I'm going to go ahead and stick with E2, and then I'm going to choose the leanest machine type here. That'll be the E2 Micro. 2 CPUs, 1 gigabyte of RAM. All right, I'm not entirely sure what this is here. Enable to use screen capturing. I guess I'll go ahead and check that. It's confidential service. That's probably going to be dealing with encrypting the contents. I'm not going to worry about that one. I'm not going to be deploying a container on this. For the boot disk, let's go ahead and I don't think I want to be on Debian here. I'm just more familiar with Ubuntu. So let's see if we've got Ubuntu to choose from. So we'll use just regular old Ubuntu. And we've got 18.04. I think I'm going to go ahead and do 20.04, which is the current long-term stable release. I think it'll be okay with 18.04 or 20.04. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Identity, I guess we'll leave this as the default. Access scopes, we'll leave that as the default. I'm going to go ahead and allow both kinds of traffic into this machine. I'm not sure we'll do anything with web server, but it wouldn't be bad to have that turned on. All right, let's just go ahead and create this. Even though it says $7.11 or $7.11 a month, I think we're still going to be under the free tier, so that should be okay. I'll go ahead and click on create and let's see what it does. Looks like it's provisioning. I'll go ahead and pause this and we'll start it back up when it's done. All right, that took about 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds. Looks like I've got an external IP address. Looks like we're green here. I'm not entirely sure how to connect onto it yet, but I'll get that figured out and we'll continue. All right, so over here under Connect, we've got SSH. I'm going to go ahead and choose this first one. We'll open it up in a browser window, and that should get us, you want to connect? Yeah, let's connect. That should give us connection here, allow us to continue getting things set up. Okay, so it looks like I'm here. I'm logged in as, used my Google account. That's good. Okay, let's go ahead and get this set up for how we'll need it in the class. I'm going to want you to use an account that's going to be the same for everyone so that when I'm remotely connecting to these machines to kind of get things configured for the examples we'll do in class and to look at your work, I don't want to have to be trying to guess about what your account name is. So I'm going to have you each create an account called student. So here's what we're going to do for that one. Let me go ahead and just zoom in here. Maybe make this a little bit bigger for us. Okay, so we've got some instructions on the various Linux commands that we'll be wanting you to get familiar with, but we'll go over a couple of them right now. So the first one is sudo, stands for like super user do. I'm going to do a command as like the administrator on this machine. And so I'm going to do, so with those permissions, I'm going to create a user. So we'll say user add -m, we'll tell it to make the home directory for that user, and we'll call it student. So now we've created that user. I want this user to also have the ability to run this super user do command. And so we're going to modify that user. So sudo user mod. And we're going to give it the command lowercase a, capital G. And we're going to give them sudo permissions. And that's for student. So that's going to make that user a sudoer. And so now we're just going to change the shell. The default shell that we're using here is not nearly as nice. The up arrow and the down arrow doesn't work to scroll through your commands. And so we're going to go ahead and change the shell for that user as well. So sudo change shell, CHSH -s, and that will be /bin bash and student. So that should make it so that when we switch users to that users, we'll still be in good shape. Let's also now go ahead and put a password on on this. And I'll need you to set this password the same for everyone, because I'm going to need to use that password for when I connect onto your machines. So let's go ahead and set the password. So sudo passwd, and again for student. That should prompt us for a password, and that password is just going to be student1234, all lowercase. We'll retype it, and now that's been updated. Now you won't be using that password to log on. We're going to log on without supplying a password, but you will need to supply that password when you try to do something as the super user from the student account, which is definitely a permission that I will need. Okay, so now let's talk about what is it going to take to get us to be able to log on to this machine. So to do that, I'm going to use PowerShell. If you're on Mac, you can do all these things with Terminal just as well. And so what we have to do is we have to create a public key, private key pair. And we will use then that pair to be able to authenticate ourselves. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just here in my home user directory here in PowerShell, and I'm just going to type the command ssh keygen. SSH-KEYGEN. KEYGEN. That's SSH. SSH keygen. Okay, so it's telling me it's making this public key, private key pair. Where are you going to put it? I'll accept to put it in the default, which is just in the same location I am, in the folder called .ssh. The dot is going to mean that it's hidden, so it normally doesn't show up in directory listings. And it's going to put the private key in a file called IDRSA. So, wants to know if I'm going to use a passphrase. If I put a passphrase, of course, that would make this more secure, but for convenience sake, I'm going to leave that blank. It'll ask me for the same passphrase again. And it has now generated that public key, private key pair. If I were to change to that folder, cd.ssh, and do a listing, I should see I've got these two files here. IDRSA, which is my private key, that should never leave this computer, and IDRSA pub, which is the public key, which I can give out to anyone, doesn't really matter, and we'll actually be copying the contents of this file up to our server here in just a minute. Okay, so now we've got the information that we need here on this machine. Now we have to get the information from IDRSA pub, this public key, back over to our virtual private server. And so to do this, I'm going to go ahead and switch users to that student account that we created. So to do that, let's go ahead and type in SU for switch user, and then student. Let's say we want to switch user from my Google account here to the student account that we just created. So I'll switch users. It's going to ask for the password, student1234. All right, so now it looks like I'm the student here, and what I'd like to do is get that public key from my SSH, from the keygen that I just created. I want that public key over here. And so you'll notice my directory is still in the directory that I initially logged on with, so let me change directories. So CD, just CD by itself should take me to that directory. Let's take a look what that is. PWD, yeah, home student, that's where I think I should be, so I'm in my home directory. Now I'm going to go ahead and make the .ssh folder here as well. So mkdir.ssh. I'm going to change directories to that. And then I'm going to create a new file in here called authorized keys. And I'm going to do that with the built-in editor called Nano. So Nano and authorized keys. Authorized _ KEYS. It tells me it's a new file. Great. Now, what I need to do is I need to get the contents of my IDRSA pub file up here. So I am going to just cat IDRSA .pub, and that's the contents of that public key. So I'm just going to copy this here in PowerShell, press enter to, after I highlight, press enter to copy. I'm getting everything just exactly from this. Starts with the, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to just start with the very last character here, and I'm going to go right up to where it starts with SSH. This line above it is the command line that has the cat statement in it. So here we are just getting that key. Then I'm going to come here and paste it in. I think Control V will paste here. And it's actually scrolled this line past, so it's all here on one line. That's exactly how we want it. So I'm going to go ahead now and exit out of this. Control X is the way we exit. Do you want to save? Yes. I'll press Y for yes. The file name, that's correct. And so now we've got that authorized keys file. So that's what we needed. We needed to get that public key up here. So now we should be able to connect on this back from PowerShell or terminal. So I'm going to come back to my, I could stay there in the SSH folder, but there's no reason for me to be there. So I'm going to come back to my regular root folder, and now I'm just going to SSH to that machine. But I'm going to SSH the username that I want to connect on, which is student, at, and then I need the public IP address of that machine, which is right here. So I've got that public IP address, and that should just connect me straight on without prompting for a password. Are you sure you want to connect? YES. I have to type out all the way YES. Ah, I'm denied. So I did something wrong. Darn it. Let's see if I can work that out. Okay, I see the problem. I spelled authorized keys wrong. So let's go ahead and rename that one. So let's MV authorized keys to AUTHORIZED keys. All right, let's give that a try. So now let me go ahead and try to SSH to that again, and now it's let me on just fine. So now I'm here as student. If I do a ls-al, I should be able to see my .ssh folder, not very nicely there with the color scheme. But now I'm connected on and able to connect on without using a password. So that's just great. So now I should be able to close my console, my web console. I'll type exit. That'll take me out of my switch user command. I'm back to being the gov. I'll exit again, and that should close the console. So now over here in Google, this thing is, the status is green, it's running. That's my IP address, and that's how I can now connect onto that machine remotely. So if I exit out of this, I'm back to my local machine, and I should be able to SSH back to the student account there, and I'm connecting on there and now running commands on that machine in the cloud.